Rangers fans, welcome to Liberty Blue, the best Rangers podcast in town. I'm Andrew Chelney, alongside Nick Zararis. We scream about the Rangers so that you don't have to. This is episode 58, live on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube, and we're available wherever you get your podcasts as well. We did a special episode on Saturday as free agency just started, so go and check that out if you haven't already. Some breaking news reactions that we had as the day went along. Nick, it's been a couple of days since the start of free agency so far. We've had some time to think about all the things that Christopher has done in the meantime. And what is the biggest takeaway so far, Nick?
They had no cap space and they had to be resourceful, so they threw a lot of money at a lot of guys who were loosely, I would call NPCs. Guys like Riley Nash, guys like Pitlick, who probably won't make the opening night roster, but offer them flexibility. Wheeler and Quick, we talked about the over 35 contracts where they can push the cap penalty into next year when the cap should supposedly go up. But yeah, that's my biggest takeaway. They didn't have a lot of flexibility. They had to get creative, and for whatever they had to get creative by their own doing. This isn't like, oh, he's a genius. This is, oh, I have no other options. So there wasn't any big move to be made. We talked about it on Saturday a lot. When they decided they wanted to keep Gaudreau or they couldn't find a taker for Gaudreau, that kind of forced them to pivot a little bit into where we are now, where a lot of volume, a lot of guys on those 800,000, 900,000, a little over $1 million deals per season. And there's no long-term repercussions, which is good. That's something the Rangers have done a very poor job of in free agency over the years, is giving away term because they had to keep the AAV down. In the case of all these guys, these are pretty short-term deals. There's a few darts in there. The Gustafsson one we didn't really talk about on Saturday because we were more talking about Wheeler and Quick and the big picture focus, but there's some interesting stuff going on. It's not as if they set themselves back with what they did on Saturday, but it again, we emphasize this a lot. It does not solve the team's fundamental issues of not being able to score enough and drive possession. That's really the issue at hand here, and maybe it comes together during the season. Like we said, they're putting a lot on Laviolette's plate. They're assuming that just changing the coach is going to fix a lot of the team's issues.
The one thing that I think Chris and Glenn and maybe Jim Dolan, if he remembers that he has a hockey team, are relying on is that Peter Laviolette will actually do things at practice.
That's the hope.
Because Gerard Gallant did nothing, and we know that he did nothing, and yet nobody really asked him about it until after he left. Why you don't do anything at practice? The one hope that the management, as of right now, have looking at the way this roster is constructed is, okay, this team is really good on paper, but the other coach couldn't activate them. Gerard Gallant failed to put them in the right positions, failed to prepare them the right way, failed to do X, Y, and Z. So here's Peter Laviolette, who hasn't won anything since, standard definition 360p television was the norm, to come and fix the problem. So that is how the situation reads to me. And again, we talked about this on Saturday, how the contracts aren't the issue. In terms of just the money,
it's fine.
Chris did fine. There were teams that did a lot worse. The Alex Killorn 6 years, 6-point-something million by the Ducks. Pittsburgh giving Matt Murray a lifetime contract despite him never being healthy to play. I mean, not
Tristan
Matt Murray,
Jarry.
Tristan Jarry, yes.
It all blends together. The mid-Penguins goalies
They're the
together.
same person to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they gave Tristan Jarry a lifetime contract despite him never being healthy enough to play. Like, in terms of just contracts, it could have been so much worse.
Yes.
It could have been, like, Blake Wheeler could have been Bobby Holik. Chris could have gave Blake Wheeler 3 years, $3.5 million, like something ludicrous that would have not only broken the bank, but also would have been terrible, both short term and long term. 1 year, 800,000 or 800 some change that it was. Money wise, it's fine. No one, it could have done a lot worse with that. So in terms of just contracts, I'll give Chris like a B+, A-. Like, hey, only looking at money in. Could have been a lot worse. The players, though, that's a whole different conversation. And we talked about this a lot on Saturday. Like, Nick Bonino is a really good addition for the bottom six. He's not going to give you much offensively, but as a defensive forward, somebody that the Rangers really, really need, especially on the penalty kill, he's really good at that. So you know what? That's a fine signing to me. I don't have an issue with that. Other guys, Gustin, like we just talked about, I don't have an issue with these guys. It's just, okay, if Jonathan Quick is going to be the backup, supposedly he's going to be Shesterkin's mentor. The thing about that is, I'm not saying that he doesn't need one anymore. Like, that's, if you, I'm not going to get into, like, the nitty gritty of Shesterkin's psyche about that. Like, whatever. The thing about Shesterkin is that if you want him to dominate in April, you need a backup goalie that can stop pucks 20 times out of a season.
Yeah.
Jonathan Quick can't do that. So what is he here for? I don't know.
It's a good question. Anytime we start talking about good guy, mentor, leader, we're going way down into the list of superlatives to describe people because we can't say anything nice about their game. Like Elliot Friedman saying, "Nice guy Riley Nash lands with Rangers." Not good hockey player, nice guy. So we have to be polite to people in the hockey universe. Whereas in the NBA, I spent the entirety of Saturday when Twitter agreed to work with people laughing that Desmond Bain got $200 million. Like the cultural differences are so funny between the two, where everybody in the NHL media is like, well, this guy, he's so nice, everybody likes him. That's terrific. I hope everybody likes each other on my team. But at the end of the day, if you can't play, you can't play. It's like the old clip of Cosell from NFL Network going on, he's on Dan Patrick's show, where he's like, I thought they took EJ Manuel because he's a good leader. They took EJ Manuel because he's 6'4". Eventually, you got to make the throws. You got to make the plays. It's great he's tall. It's great people like hanging out with him. But at some point in the National Football League, you got to make some throws. If you can't make throws, you don't have any value. But in the hockey world, we do not care. We want everybody to get along like it's summer camp. We need a guy who's got energy to make friendship bracelets and lead the sing-alongs around the campfire. That's why the Leafs gave Ryan Reeves 3 years, $1.3 million. And I just finished reading, if you haven't read Ken Campbell's column, and Ken's very hit or miss on his takes, but he wrote like 1,000-word takedown of Ryan Reeves, which I highly enjoyed giggling to myself about, where he's like, the Leafs literally signed a party MC to go on Hockey Night in Canada before he gets healthy scratched, because he's going to play all of 30 games this year, more than likely. But you got to take care of your old guys. And thankfully, the Rangers did not go out and throw money at anybody totally useless. They didn't. And they didn't give anybody terms. So objectively, you give them a B minus, a C plus, nothing atrocious. You didn't hurt yourself. Blake Wheeler is better than what you had last year on that second line right wing for stretches where it was Gaudreau, it was Dryden Hunt, it was Jimmy Vesey. Blake Wheeler is better than all three of those guys. I absolutely agree with that, and I've got some good Blake Wheeler stuff we can talk about a little bit later. But again, the Rangers claim that they think they're Stanley Cup contenders. On a Stanley Cup winning team, Blake Wheeler in his current state is a third line right wing. The Rangers do not have anybody else in their lineup as of right now who can fill in behind Capo Caco as their second best right wing. If they want to experiment with Lafreniere or Kreider on the offside, which they did at points last year, which didn't really stick for any extended period of time, okay. But this lineup still, it just does not. On paper, this lineup looks kind of gross. That's what I'll say. On paper, that bottom six especially, like, you expect your third line, you realistically need somewhere in the neighborhood of 55 to 60 goals from all three of those guys combined. I don't see that from Hedel, Lafreniere, and whether it's Vesey, Blake Wheeler, etc. I don't see 60 to 60-ish goals from those three guys combined.
We talked about this on Saturday, how it's not that we're necessarily against who they signed and for the term that they signed for. It's the whole thought process of, okay, the Rangers have established that they are, a slow and old team that needs to get faster. That seems to be the overwhelming, hey, this team, like the Devils skated absolute circles around the Rangers in the playoffs. They were too slow. They couldn't get anything done. The puck was in their own zone for half the series, and it was over. So the Rangers went out and got players that fixed none of the issue. And that's why I gave them the C minus kind of trade grade. Because, like, okay, Blake Wheeler will give you counting stats, but as we talked about on Saturday, will those counting stats amount to wins? Are they meaningful points? He'll put up 2 assists in a 7-3 loss, but does that matter? Does that do it? Like, when Jonathan Quick inevitably gives up 8 goals in a game, like, and Blake Wheeler has 2 assists in that game, like, are those meaningful numbers? The answer is no. So you should have traded Barclay Goodrow earlier. Now, I understand that in a trade, you need 2 parties that want to get a deal done. However, Tampa Bay just shipped off Pat Maroon to the Wild for a bag of chips. So if that's possible for Pat Maroon, anything is possible for Barclay Goodrow. So I
That
think
tells me they wanted to keep him.
yeah, right, exactly. Like they view him as a valuable asset. So with that money, you could have signed Daniel Sprong, a guy who dominates at creating 5-on-5 offense. He is one of the best at it. Like he's I think he signed like 1 year, $2 million deal. Yeah. That would have been a tremendous value for the Rangers. Hey, if you ship Goudreau out and overpay him, give him 1 year, $3 million. Like that's still so much better than the Barclay Goodrow that you have now, especially that you signed a lot of bottom six defensive specialists like Nick Bonino, etc., that can just come in and do the same thing that Barclay Goodrow does. So why is he still here?
I was reading Arthur's column over the weekend, who has been a full-throated defender of Barclay Goodrow since he got here, and very casually slipped in at the end of a paragraph. The Rangers are happy they're going to get to shift Barclay Goodrow to the wing now, and Nick Bonino is going to get to be a center. I thought we signed Barclay Goodrow because he was good at faceoffs. I thought that was the reason we brought him, was he was a good fourth-line center and he won faceoffs. Now all of a sudden, the Rangers are happy to shift a $3.6 million guy from center to wing. Like, at some point, these people have to read what they write. Like, right? Like, if you're going to defend, you got to wear it. And that's my biggest gripe with so much of this, is how very quickly that history gets retconned, history gets altered to justify it. Like, oh, well, Chris Drury did a good job considering he didn't have a lot of flexibility. He's the reason he doesn't have any flexibility. He has $9 million tied up in Vinny Trocheck and Barclay Goodrow. He had to retain salary and give away draft picks to get rid of Patrick Nemeth, to get rid of Ryan Reeves, to get rid of Sammy Blais. Like, at some point, you don't get to keep saying, well, it's on the players, it's on the players. Yeah, it's on the players, but the GM is the one who keeps putting them in these positions where they can't succeed or they have limited opportunities to succeed. And I think Blake Wheeler will be fine. And we're going to talk about him in a sec here, because I've got some data from his last year in Winnipeg we can talk about. And one thing that I think really stuck out to me in doing my research is he played against dog shit competition last year. And that's why a lot of his numbers aren't as bad as they are. The bulk of his minutes were against bottom six forwards, because Winnipeg hard matched against lesser competition to protect him, because they knew he was limited. I hope to God Peter Laviolette matches lines, because my favorite thing about Gerard Gallant during his 2 years here was every broadcast being like, well, Gerard Gallant doesn't feel the need to match lines because he trusts all four of his lines equally. Well, Gerard, I don't know if you understand this or not, but when you set up your lineup, you want to play your best players the most minutes. That is how you generally win in sports. You play your best guys the most minutes they possibly can play, and then you do it in descending order. Not, oh, I trust everybody equally. Well, if that were true, how come Barclay Goodrow is not the first line center playing between Chris Kreider and Capo Caco? That's why I always get so tired of getting treated like we're stupid. And that's generally been my gripe for a while with the Rangers, is they treat the public like we're stupid. We're the Rangers. You want to be a part of this. You want to buy tickets. You want to watch. Well, at the end of the day, sports are supposed to be a service, entertainment. Like, I'm supposed to get something out of watching this other than just misery and heart palpitations and agita, because that's ultimately the feeling I get. It's nothing like, oh, the Rangers are on. It's the Rangers are on.
Yeah, I mean, like, at the end of the day, we watch because we like being fans and we enjoy the team. At the same time, if we could, be talked to as a nebulous, like, we know things about the sport, as opposed to, hey, we know more things because we're part of the organization and you're not. That I would hope maybe that Peter Laviolette brings a little bit more of a, hey, here's what I know, and let me make you a little bit smarter too, but perhaps, as opposed to, hey, I'm Gerard Gallant, I know things and you don't because I'm a head coach and you're not. Ha 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 ha. What's going to be really funny to me is this year when Ryan Reeves does nothing in Toronto and David Kampf does nothing in Toronto, and they fire Sheldon Keefe and they bring in Gerard Gallant to replace him.
I can see it.
And then all mayhem erupts because Gerard Gallant clearly cannot coach. And then he's like, oh, well, Brad Treliving Masterclass does it again.
The narratives are so funny. That's what always kills me about hockey. Nobody ever actually reports what's going on in the game. They report the narratives, because a lot of people who write about hockey don't actually understand the mechanics of hockey well enough to write about it. So they rely on really cliche really cliche statements and quotes they get in the locker room as opposed to being able to describe what they watched. It's annoying.
Yeah, I mean, like the thing about hockey coverage in general is that I just wish it was more kind of based in reality, if that makes sense.
Yes.
There's a
It
lot
was
of
it was less fan fiction and more sports journalism. I
there's
always write that. I always make that joke like, "Hey, it's time to close AO3 and actually write about it." Because anytime I open the Athletic, I'm liable to read like 3 paragraphs about like Sidney Crosby's eye color when the light hits it at a certain angle, as opposed to him actually playing hockey. But yeah,
I mean, I want to see less of he's a good guy, character guy, and more of this is how this player helps his team win in the big moments.
yeah,
This is how here's a legitimate breakdown, and like there are people on Twitter that will do that, but I want to see it more from the big people in the sport, the big check marks, the cottage boys. I want to see more of that from them. I want to see, okay, Blake Wheeler, 50 whatever points it was last season, but he's this is why he's bad defensively. This is what he'll contribute to the Rangers, and here he is on a 1-year prove it kind of deal with them. Like, I want to see more of that. I know like Jay Fresh does it, more and more kind of the analytics guys are doing it, but I need to see that from more of a nebulous thing out of NHL coverage, because this good guy out of Saskatoon gets a 75-year deal with the Florida Everblades. He's gonna crush it for them. It's like, dude, can you tell me how he plays? Can you help me understand what he's good at and what he's not, as opposed to him being a great guy at a Shawinigan? Like, I don't care. I don't care where he's from. Like, obviously I'd rather have a good locker room presence than a bad locker room presence. But at a certain point, there's
gotta
only
make plays. You gotta make plays.
I need to know how you play come game time. Yeah. Are you gonna make the right plays? If everybody loves you if everybody loves somebody in the locker room, but they can't play hockey, guess what? Be an assistant coach. Be a coach. Be a player development guy. Be somebody that's around the team but doesn't actively contribute to losing hockey.
Easy. All right, let's do a little Blake Wheeler discourse, because I've got some stuff we can talk about here. So, face value, the numbers they're pretty solid at 5-on-5. You see 4% over league average in the offensive zone, 5% below average in the defensive zone. Those are both good. These are solid. These are both better than what the Rangers were in each of these last year. Winnipeg, okay 5-on-5 team. Middle of the pack in both expected goals and chances for, better than the Rangers. The point I want to highlight here when we talk about Blake Wheeler is this one here, because this is where it gets to me, and I'll pull it up here so it's a little bit bigger and it's easier to read. This is from puckiq.com. PuckIQ tracks the quality of competition a player plays against. This past season was the most at any year in Blake Wheeler's entire NHL career that they have data for, which only goes back to 2014, 2015. He played the most against bad players. You see it's broken up into elite, middle six, and grit tensity. Grit tensity are fourth line guys, the Nick Boninos of the world, the Ryan Reeves of the world, the guys who are only out there to minimize impacts against. It's great that he was able to play really well against the gritty competition. You would expect that. Blake Wheeler is a skillsy player. His shot and his puck skills, those aren't going to deteriorate. He's always going to have the hockey brain. It's the same thing we talked about with Patrick Kane, where it's a matter of if his body's going to be able to do what his brain wants to do. And that was kind of the issue for Patrick Kane, where sure, he still had the great senses and was able to make plays, but when it came time to actually make the plays where it required, processing the game fast enough, his body couldn't do it anymore. He could not do it consistently. So Blake Wheeler really sheltered role this past season with Winnipeg. Really good results. In the ice time he got, 40% of his ice time was against bad opponents, really drove play. 56% of the dangerous scoring chances for in that ice time. That's great. But when you look, middle six, 48%, against elite competition, 45%. And we know the Rangers like to throw Zibanejad out there against the other team's best players. So if Blake Wheeler's first line right wing on opening night How is Zibanejad and him and Kreider going to hold up together when you know Blake Wheeler is not the most fleet of foot and doesn't really make plays happen, especially in the neutral zone, something the Rangers have struggled with immensely, and why there's been that rotating door down the right wing the last couple seasons, because they can't figure out what Zibanejad and Kreider really need. It's really weird to me that the best they got out of those two guys was with Frank Vetrano 2 years ago, because all Frank did was rip it. All Frank wanted to do was rip it because he couldn't do anything else. And instead, the Rangers went out and got another playmaking, facilitating type, which I'm going to pull up here on the next chart here. Most of what Blake Wheeler does is passing and facilitating as opposed to shooting, which we know Zibanejad and Kreider already overpass too much.
Again, we talked about this on Saturday, where the Rangers are a storefront, and there's a big gaping hole in the front of the store, and instead of acknowledging this problem, instead of fixing the issue, they changed the clothes on the mannequins from the summer to the fall. That's all they did. And then, when their clothes get stolen, instead of, oh, there's a hole in the wall, we should fix it. There's a hole in the glass, we should fix it. Oh, shucks, someone stole our clothes. Oh, it's all good, we could just put new ones up. I don't know how that happened. Must have been a freak accident. They are ignoring the issue at hand. This team desperately needs shooters. This team desperately needs speed. And I understand the Rangers are they don't have the cap. Christopher, looking at you, you did this. Trocheck deal was not great. The Goudreau deal was not great. Jacob Trouba still makes way too much money for what he does. The Rangers, there's an avenue for them to get out of this, but Christopher's not going to do it. So it's the point is kind of moot. But the Rangers need shooters and they need speed, and they got not better at it in the past few days. Yeah, I mean, Nick Bonino and Erik Gustafsson and Riley Nash, they aren't bad additions based on what they are and
they're flyers.
Right, and what they are here to accomplish for their specific roles. You could have done a lot worse. You didn't give any of them term. The bottom six guys, I have essentially no gripes with. The problem is that Blake Wheeler is now slotted to be the second line winger for this team, and he doesn't play like that anymore. And he's slow, and he overpasses, a problem that the Rangers have known about for a while for Blake Wheeler, but also their own team. So, okay, you bring him in because he has counting stats. Okay, cool, sure, whatever. But the issue that you've had, you didn't fix. So what are you going to do now?
Yeah, no, and real quick, the chart on the left, if you're watching on YouTube, is chance creation. So it's scoring chances that you make yourself going up and down, and then scoring chance assists. So you pass into a scoring chance left to right. Blake Wheeler is leaning more towards left to right than up and down because he passes to assists more than he shoots. And then high danger passes, he does generate on average one high danger chance per 60 off of his passes and one shooting. So he gets to decent areas of the ice, which is good. The Rangers do need more guys who are willing to make it up and engage physically. And that's something that we can say, hey, Wheeler does fix this. He is better at this than the guys they've had in those roles. That's good. And then pulling this one up real quick, the types of offense, where this is really the crux of the issue when we talk about what the Rangers are dealing with as a team systemically, is they wanted under Gerard Gallant to be a transition, speed, rush offense-based team, but they didn't have anybody who liked to shoot the puck off of the rush other than Kreider and Zibanejad when they would have the odd man rushes going the other way, create those 2-on-1s. Blake Wheeler creates significantly less zone entries than average than you would need. He is somebody who is better at dumping and chasing the puck. In theory, that's good because the Rangers are very bad at playing dump and chase. And then you look over here at the chart on the left, you see decent at both forechecking and cycling, which, again, we said on Saturday. He's going to be good in the offensive zone once he gets there. The issue is, are the Rangers going to be able to get there enough to maximize his skill set? That's really the crux of my analysis, and Andrew, same thing. We want the Rangers to be able to get to offense more consistently, and we know defensively that Blake Wheeler is not the best, and that's part of why he played against less than quality competition last year, because Rick Bowness realized, hey, this guy can't play defense anymore. We got to protect him. We got to get him favorable matchups. That way he can exploit the competition. Whereas the Rangers, we don't know if they're going to be able to protect him in that same way.
I am very interested to see how Peter Laviolette deploys his players because I would have to imagine that if you take a head coaching job in the National Hockey League, that you have watched the team that you're about to coach. So I would have to imagine that Peter Laviolette has at least passively seen some of the issues that plague this team. That they pass 100 times and just never shoot the puck. That they are too slow at times. That they're poor defensively. There's a lot like the power play when it's on fire. So how do you replicate that, but do it more consistently? I'm sure Peter Laviolette has a plan that he presented to the Rangers. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have hired him. But I'm interested to see how all this shakes out because when you have an issue that's not resolved and you bring in a new general behind the bench to kind of lead the troops to victory, I am curious to see what the changes are. At least, I mean, you probably won't see them game one, but I want to see, by mid-December, what the Rangers are doing differently in terms of scheme, in terms of, their deployment, all these things that differ from Gerard Gallant. Because, when the Rangers first hired Laviolette, I said that he was essentially just Gerard Gallant with the Spirit Halloween mask on. And that's my worst fear, is that this is the same person. But if Peter Laviolette can actually fix or address some of these issues, and maybe the Rangers can hide Blake Wheeler on the third line and kind of have him be that offensive dynamo next to whoever, and maybe that happens.
There's a world in which playing him with Hedel protects a lot of Blake Wheeler's deficiencies because Hedel is pretty good at generating zone entries on his own, where he doesn't need his line mates as support because Hedel's so big and he's such a good straight line skater that he can just gain the zone, wait for Lafreniere and Wheeler to catch up, and then they can engage. Because we know that when the kid line, when them with Kakko was effective, it was those prolonged offensive zone shifts where they maintain pressure for 45 seconds, a minute and a half, and really break down the other team. That's a world in which I could see it being effective. And one last thing on Wheeler here. Zone entries, like I said before, Blake Wheeler, not great at generating zone entries on his own. He's dependent on his line mates to do that. And then I have the forechecking graph here because I wanted to support what I said before about him being pretty solid on both. He's above average at getting pressure on puck retrievers in the offensive zone. That's good. The Rangers don't have a lot of guys who are good at that. That's going to help. But again, we got to see what style the Rangers want to play with here. That's really the question, because for an entire season and a half, really, the Rangers didn't have a preferred style of play. It was, let's figure it out as we go. We're not going to practice that hard. We're good enough most nights that we can out-talent the other teams. And you heard the incredulousness when Gerard Gallant was asked about his job after they lost to the Devils. He's like, if I can't stand on my record here after winning, 100 games in 2 years, what else do I have? And it's great. And it speaks to what we talked about before with the empty calorie stats. It's great that you can win in the regular season. Winning in the regular season and winning in the playoffs are two very different things because the style of play is very different and the quality of competition is better. We saw it a lot this year where the Rangers really struggled to put away bad teams, especially in the first half of the season, because they messed around. We'll out-talent them. We're better than Columbus. We're better than the Blackhawks. We're better than the Ducks. Why am I worried about them? We can just out-talent them. And that's fine for stretches, but against good opponents, if you are not dialed in immediately, and you heard them say this more than once during the stretch run, we know we can't just turn it on in the playoffs. Well, they tried to just turn it on in the playoffs, and that's what happened.
The thing about Gerard Gallant taking credit for those wins is that they won despite him, which is the funny thing about it, is that, obviously...
And they threw him under the bus as soon as it came time for someone to hold accountability.
They did a lot of that. Obviously he did more than zero, I would have to imagine. Otherwise, one, they would never have hired him, and two, he would have been fired after about 8 seconds behind the bench. But, he did something, but... he didn't do any mid-game adjustments. He didn't practice with the team at all, which I don't know if you know this, Gerard, but your team needs to practice in order to figure out their identity, how they want to play. Maybe set plays off a face-off draw in the offensive, defensive zone, et cetera, et cetera. This is what practice is for, and you have 20-minute practices where you skate around the rink like you're out for a stroll at Rockefeller. So, Gerard can claim that he won all these games, But how much of Gerard Gallant was fused into a lot of those wins? Like that's the biggest question that I have is, yeah, I mean, he did things. I would hope so. He's the head coach of a National Hockey League team.
Hey,
So
I can give him credit for one thing. I can give him credit for hiring Mike Kelly to run the power play, because
Sure.
the power play was very good the
Sure.
last 2 years.
He did that, and I'm grateful that he did that. But in terms of the day-to-day, I'm the head coach, and these are the things that I'm doing to improve the team. He didn't practice. He didn't know what to do. If his plan A didn't work in the middle of a game, he didn't know what to do. And we saw that throughout the playoffs against the Devils. We saw that in stretches throughout the season. He doesn't know how to call an audible. He doesn't know how to do that. And that is one of the biggest issues that I had with him, is that he didn't know what to do. And then after the game, like, he took credit if they won. I'm not a huge fan of that. So hopefully Laviolette does a better job of that department.
Okay, so last thing I'll throw up here, because this is the one that I found interesting of all the dart throws, is Erik Gustafsson, somebody who's been around. He's floated from team to team. This is a skill set, a toolbox, a profile, whatever you want to call it, that the Rangers have generally not liked from their defensemen. We saw it. They rather had Ben Harpur and Nico Mikkola on the third pair. Last year, having Justin Braun and Patrick Nemeth, those kind of low risk, low reward, bigger guys who are going to be better at retrievals, not really worried about moving the puck. Erik Gustafsson is the type of defenseman. He's got a similar profile to Zach Jones in terms of skill set. He's pretty good at moving the puck. He's an okay skater. In an ideal world, if he sticks, he can be the quarterback of the second power play. He was really solid for Washington this past year. And I imagine this was a Peter Laviolette request that, hey, Chris, if you can, look at this guy. I know I can get good work out of him. But this also tells me what we were talking about before we started recording, that Zach Jones probably won't get a real run at making the team out of camp because Gustafsson signed a one-way. And he plays a similar style, and he's got a little bit more of a track record, and Laviolette's already familiar with him. So it's good that they brought in this type of player. This is a skill set that I've wanted the Rangers to prioritize for their third pair. It'll make Braden Schneider more effective because, God bless him, he's a decent skater and okay physically, but his puck skills in the defensive zone are not where they need to be. Part of that is because he's played with partners who aren't great puck movers either, but at the very least, if you play Gustafsson with Schneider, you're giving Schneider a little bit more protection where he's not going to have to do everything by himself, and giving him an actual puck mover as a partner should unlock a little bit more of Schneider's game that we've been hoping to see, as opposed to kind of the last 2 years where it's just kind of been survive until the next shift because his partner has been so ineffective.
And he's also had 75 of them. So there's no, when you are especially a young defenseman on, let's say a third pair, you need stability. That's one of the things that makes you understand, one, your own game better, two, your deficiencies, what you have to improve on, how to play off of your teammate. If your teammate changes every other game, it's going to be really difficult for somebody that is still learning to adjust, how to play at the NHL level every single night. It's harder for somebody to be like, okay, this is how, like, this is my teammate, this is my blue line mate here for 82 games. This is how I play with them, and this is how we're gonna do it the best way possible. When it's one night is Harper, then Mikkola, then somebody else, and then the line shuffles, and which I love to do. Like every other game, it'd be somebody else. It's hard for somebody that hasn't had 1,000 games of NHL experience under their belt to adapt to a new line mate could be every shift for all that we know. It's tough. So if Braden Schneider could get a solid partner that can just stick with him and play off of him for 82 games, that's a win.
Yeah, no, Gustafsson is an interesting statistical profile. We're seeing more of those types of guys who are pretty good puck movers, not the most physical, not the most imposing guys, really starting to stick as general managers realize, oh, I need to be able to move the puck, not just, bash people's heads in, which is great. In spurts, you need those big physical defensemen. You already have you already have Truba, Schneider, and Miller who profile as those bigger, physical, imposing types. You need to protect Schneider and make him better at his job by giving him a partner who can actually move the puck. Because God bless him, but Schneider treats the puck like a hand grenade in the defensive zone and rips the puck when he's in the offensive zone. Giving him a partner who can actually play hockey as opposed to rock'em sock'em robots will help unlock more of his game.
Somebody should tell that for Keandre Miller, because that's what Jacob Trouba does.
Trouba, it's really interesting because in a vacuum, it makes sense because you would think that Miller's, and this is where we start getting into questions of physical traits versus skill sets, because everybody is clamoring for Keandre Miller to be more physical, to be a better shutdown defender because of his size, because of his reach, because of how good a skater he is. But we can all tell by watching that's not his game. He is a bigger guy, but he is more puck skilled. He is somebody who's more inclined to make a play offensively. And it's the same problem the Rangers have with Trouba. The Rangers look at Trouba and see a big, physical, imposing guy who throws a lot of hits, and they think, oh, defensive defenseman. That's not his game. Trouba's best asset is his offensive instincts. When he is not ripping the puck from everywhere and missing the net.
Every time.
And he is more focused on maintaining the zone and cycling, that's when he's at his best. He's not he's not a great shooting defenseman. He is one of the least efficient shooters in the entire league. He shoots like 2% from the field, one of the worst shoot rates in the league of any player in the entire sport. But if the Rangers can find a way to either get it through his head that, hey, you need to play more defensive oriented and let Keandre be the primary puck mover and carrier on your pair, great. Or, like we've been clamoring for a while, play Fox with Miller, play Lindgren with Trouba. That would be more of a balanced pair set where the skill sets complement each other a little bit better. But at the very least, we should have 7 defensemen who are decent now. We are not talking about Ben Harper, more than likely. I hope
Hopefully.
If Ben Harper makes the roster over Gustafsson, something went wrong. In my opinion, at least, if Ben Harper is the 6th defenseman
at that point, you just got to control alt delete and just start again. Like you just got to hope that the simulation's glitched and you got to restart your computer. Like that's the only way that happens. Because if Ben Harper, listen, like, he got his bag, I think, playing in the minors. So if he's the 11th defenseman and everybody's injured, that's one thing. But if he starts, or if he's a 7th defenseman at the start of the season, or at any point when the Rangers don't need him per se, that's a big problem. So hopefully it doesn't end up happening. Hopefully Ben Harper just is a Hartford Wolfpack and we just don't hear about him. But you know what? The one guy that we don't have to think about anymore is Hayek the Kayak. How about that? Not qualified.
Hey man, the Rangers swore he was going to be something. They gave him a million opportunities to stick, and he never became anything of note. I still remember that one year he played 5 games before he broke his arm or dislocated his shoulder, whatever it was. And God bless Sam and Joe. They were reading the notes about how the Rangers play so much more structured up here, and that's why it's harder for him to adapt. In the AHL, there's not a lot of structure, so guys just have to freelance and make it up as they go along.
That's not true.
Yeah, hey man, they got to say anything you can say to talk these guys up.
Sure.
That's the Rangers are great about making sure that whenever somebody struggles, hey, it's just because of this and this, not because this is who they are as a player. That's really, I you could tell, even you and I, who are not professional scouts, watching Hayek. I went back a few years ago and I read every single draft profile I could about him, and they all said the same thing. His best trait is his skating. And then he got to the NHL, and very clearly, his skating was not great. He constantly was losing foot braces and losing puck battles because he couldn't get there fast enough. He was always caught in between where he wasn't sure if he should be back skating or turning all the way around. And yeah, I could tell, you could tell, anybody who wasn't Rangers pilled could tell that Lieber Hayek is not an NHL quality defenseman, but they gave him opportunity after opportunity. They lied about, we think he's going to turn a corner soon. We think this guy has upside. And that was purely to save face from losing the Ryan McDonagh trade because they really lost that trade horrendously. Now, especially, I mean, you really, and again, nobody knows. It's hard to tell on prospects. You can't know until you're in your system. But word of advice, don't trade with Tampa Bay. Don't trade with Tampa Bay. Don't trade with Colorado. Don't trade with the teams who know what they're doing when it comes to talent identification. Just don't. You're going to do yourself a disservice when you get pennies on the dollar for a good player. The Lightning got 2 Stanley Cups out of Ryan McDonough.
Yeah, well, the thing about talent evaluation is that the same Tampa Bay Lightning traded away 5 picks for a fourth liner, and Colorado keeps signing Jack Johnson. So,
Cups, it doesn't matter anymore.
I guess it doesn't matter anymore. But, the whole point is to, you've won. Now let's try to do it again, and not kind of.
Too. It's fine.
It's fine. Everything is fine. Need RBs. Yeah. No. I mean, listen. At the end of the day, the trade was a disaster, and I understand the Rangers. They tried so hard to at least pretend that it wasn't as bad as it was. They tried their hardest to be like, oh, but Libor Hájek could actually do something. And when we had Sam Rosen on before the start of last season, and we asked him the question about Libor Hájek and how is he still here? He did give kind of a PR answer, but at the same time, he was like, this is his final opportunity. He essentially said this is it. If he can show that he can hang, the Rangers will keep him. I'm paraphrasing. That's if you go back.
That's what he said. Yeah.
If you go back and listen, that's what he said. This season will kind of decide on Libor Hájek's future with the Rangers, and he failed, and now he's not here anymore. So.
You think he ends up in Montreal like our friend Lias Anderson?
Jeff Gordon got his guy. He's
taking care of his guy. That I respect.
He got him. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. That's what it was. And maybe Libor does go to Montreal. I mean, they do need bodies. So I guess I don't know, man. Everything that I've watched, and again, I wish that Libor Hájek just woke up one day and became a good hockey player. I'm not saying negative things about Libor Hájek because I don't like Libor Hájek. Just going off of his on-ice performance, he's not an NHL caliber defenseman. He can't really skate. He's always a step behind, always kind of unsure of what the next play that he's supposed to make is. He's just not somebody that you want in your top 6 in the National Hockey League. Hopefully, maybe he wakes up tomorrow on July 4th. He's like, oh, I've discovered it. I've found the secret to the sauce. I have the secret formula. I have Mr. Krabs' secret Karamati formula. I've found it. I've discovered it. And maybe he becomes a good hockey player. Hopefully that comes true for him. But as of right now, the way that he's played, he's just not good enough. And that makes the trade from the McDonough trade wasn't great to begin with. But the whole Libor Hájek thing, they tried so hard to jam him into the lineup when he's just not good enough. That made it worse than just kind of being like, yeah, we lost the trade. We got it. We got to move on.
Okay. They did all right. And like we said, to just reiterate off the top, they did all right on Saturday. The bottom 6 is not pretty on paper right now. It is going to put a lot of pressure on the offense to generate more, to score more, because frankly, the bottom 6 is not going to contribute a whole lot. You hope Jimmy Vesey can replicate what he did this past season, where he was one of the better defensive forwards they had, probably their best defensive forward, in all honesty. You hope he can replicate that, and then say, okay, that third line of him, Hedel, Lafreniere doesn't look atrocious. And then the fourth line, you just hold Bonino, Gaudreau, and then whoever wins the left wing job, whether it's Will Cooley, whether it's Pitlick, whether it's the French guy whose name I can't pronounce, they signed on Saturday from the Canadiens. Whichever one of those guys wins that job, that's fine. But you're going to put a lot of pressure on your top 6 to score. Last thing before we get out of here. Now it's all on Miller and Lafreniere. And this is where we have to reiterate something that's really important. The Rangers' interests and those players' interests are not the same. Everybody wants the Rangers to everybody who kind of knows what they're talking about would like the Rangers to lock up K'Andre Miller to a long-term deal now before the salary cap jumps up. K'Andre Miller's agent, if they know what they are doing, is going to say, no, we're doing 1 or 2 years, and we're going to re-rack when the salary cap is 87, 88 million, and we're going to get closer to what we're worth. Because you're buying K'Andre Miller at age, I want to say Miller is 22. So you'd be buying his ages here.
You'd be buying some of his RFA years.
You're buying from 24 to, if the Evolving Wild prediction, which they're usually pretty good, Evolving Wild's model has the predicted term at 7 years, 6.2 million per year. That buys you his age 24 through 30 seasons. That is the peak you're going to get. We know statistically your best overall years value-wise are 24, 25, 26, because those years you're at your physical peak. You don't start physically declining until 28, 29, but you typically put up your best counting stats at 28, 29, 30, because that's when you're playing the highest in the lineup. You're getting the most minutes. You're probably running a power play unit. So you can extract the most value possible from a Keandre Miller extension by locking him up now. He's not going to do that, though, because it doesn't behoove him. And frankly, the Rangers don't have the cap space to do that type of long-term deal, which, again, the general manager has forced himself into a corner. It's okay with Lafreniere because he's yet to really pop off. Him, it makes a lot of sense to do the short term, let me get my value up, let me try and get a better role, put up more counting stats. Because at 5-on-5, the metrics for both are fine. To get paid, though, you got to put up counting stats in this league. And that's really that's the next hurdle for both Lafreniere, Miller, and Kakko, frankly, to climb is you got to start putting up counting stats. It's great. You can score 45 points only getting 5-on-5 minutes, not doing anything on the power play. It's great. But if you want to get paid, you're going to have to start forcing your way onto the power play unit. You're going to have to break that 60, 70 point threshold if you really want to get paid. I think both guys are going to end up taking 2-year deals, getting closer to unrestricted free agency. They'll both be 25 at the end 2 years from now. And then the Rangers are really going to have to figure out what they are, because then you're walking to UFA at that point, which the Rangers have done historically with their guys. They have bridged pretty much everybody significantly. The first guy they didn't really was Fox. Other than Adam Fox, pretty much every other important player they've brought through their organization, they've bridged all the way up to UFA. They have not been proactive in signing restricted free agents to long-term deals.
Well, if you win a Norris, when
you're taken care of.
When you win the Norris as essentially a 14-year-old that Adam Fox was when you won it, there's not a whole lot of options that the team has. It's either you give this man a lifetime contract in the key to the city, or he spits in your face and he wins a Norris somewhere else. Like those are your two options. So yeah, I mean, from that perspective, the Rangers did well. But like a lot of the people that trash Keandre Miller for reasons, there's
the reason.
I do. I feel most people that are watching absolutely do. But it's not that he's a perfect player by any means, and there's a lot of miscommunication with Jacob Trouba a lot of times. Like you see it whenever one of them has the puck in the defensive zone, there's usually some kind of hesitation or maybe a miscommunication or something. There's something going on, maybe in front of the net during a play or behind the net or something. Like they don't have that chemistry. If Keandre Miller got a defensive partner that he has more chemistry with, maybe it is Fox, maybe it's Gustafsson, for all we know, who knows. But if he found a partner that he can play well with on the ice, I mean, all of the negative things people can say about him are quickly out the window, because that's the majority of the issue that I have with Keandre Miller, is that he just he doesn't really know how to play off of Jacob Trouba, and that leads to a miscommunication either in front of the net. Some guy on the other team is wide open, and both of them are like on the boards or somewhere completely not where they're supposed to be, and that leads to a goal against. When Keandre thought that Jacob was supposed to be there, and Jacob thought that Keandre was supposed to be there. So if they can kind of focus on that and clear most of that up, then all of the naysayers about Keandre Miller will quickly realize just how good of a player he is.
That's the hope. The toolbox to be a special player is there. You see the flashes of a special player from Keandre in a way you haven't, frankly, from the other young guys on the team. But you haven't seen Lafreniere or Kakko or Schneider. Frankly, Hedl have the individual flashes of brilliance to the degree you have from Keandre Miller, and he's still figuring it out. And yeah, it's not great. He's played for 2 different coaches and 2 different systems with a 3-year window. This is the crucial point. This is really your inflection point. 23 to 25 is typically when these guys who are great make the leap to greatness. So the Rangers are really kind of up against it in terms of the salary cap long term, because in an ideal world, Miller pops off in this next 2-3 years, and then suddenly you're talking $7.5-8 million per year as opposed to the $6 million you are right now. So, and the Rangers don't have the luxury of offering that long-term extension right now because they don't have the cap space requisite to make said offers. So it's really a challenge, and the Rangers really are going to be beholden to whatever the salary cap jumps up to, as opposed to their ability to make more cap space.
We just got to figure it out now. I mean, Christopher has to trade Barclay Goodrow. I mean, it would be great if he did it now, so that he finds a better middle six guy that can do things at both ends of the ice, as opposed to whatever Barclay Goodrow does now. Maybe he does look at trading. This who is this, the center that they signed, sir? I am completely.
Vincent Trocheck?
Thank you. Yes, he's so unremarkable that I forgot his name for a second. Yes,
You respect Vinny Meatballs. You respect
Vinny
Meatballs.
Vinny Trocheck. Yes. It's a holiday weekend. These things happen. But maybe he does look to trade Vinny Trocheck. Maybe he does look to trade Jacob Trouba. I don't know. But there's certain players on this roster that he currently has that are making more than they are worth. So in order to accommodate for a potential K'Andre Miller extension, maybe he does a 1-year bridge to kind of just see what happens, and then maybe they go from there. Maybe K'Andre Miller makes a deal with Chris, and he's like, okay, you give me 1 year at some less than I make right now, so you can fit a higher caliber player on this roster right now, and then after this one season, because the cap is going up, let's make a trade that you essentially pay me off for the entirety of the next contract. Maybe he does that. I don't know, but it's Chris is gonna have to do some kind of finagling sooner rather than later, and I'm interested to see what he does.
And that's and we'll wrap up on this note, and that's kind of why I've been more bearish about the long-term prospects of this group is, frankly, the lack of flexibility they're going to have going forward. We said it last year, the day they signed Trocheck. They have no money to add significant players anymore unless they're willing to trade somebody out, and they've shown no willingness to get rid of anybody from this core. They've shown no willingness to consider, hey, maybe Trouba's not the fit. They made him captain when it would have made a lot of sense to try and
Gerard didn't want him to be the captain, by the way, and that happened anyway. And all he did was throw his helmet that one time.
Hey, man, it's more about the narratives. It's why they signed Jonathan Quick and Blake Wheeler, because now we got more Americans on this team, because that matters to Facebook, which is the bulk of who buys Ranger season tickets, are the people that are on Facebook in the comment section under all these signings.
Sure.
It's great they signed Jonathan Quick, who's from Connecticut and grew up a Ranger fan. Can he play hockey? Yeah. It's great they signed Blake Wheeler, who's American and has always wanted to be a Ranger. That's great. To quote Ethan, and I'll make this joke I made again on Saturday, playing for the Rangers is playing Wolf of Wall Street fantasy camp. You get to go to Nobu 3 times a week, do cocaine in the bathroom, and hook up with Instagram models. It's great if you just want to be here. I would like to win something at some point, though. Playing for the Rangers should be a novelty that all these guys are collecting at the end of their careers to live in New York for a season. You would like being a Ranger to mean, oh, we want to be winners. We want to be associated with greatness. Nah, it's just a chance to wear a nice suit and go out a couple times a week.
I don't care who had the Ranger jersey growing up. I don't particularly. I mean, unless you're Adam Fox, in which case I care a great deal.
Correct.
If you're 36 years old and you aren't the player you used to be, I don't really care what jersey you wore growing up. It matters to me a little bit how other players and coaches view you, because if they like you, there's a better chance for you to mesh well in the locker room, be a positive force, have a better say. Let's say the game is tied or you're down a goal and you speak up on the bench. There's a greater likelihood that players and coaches will listen to what you have to say. But I care about how you play the game of hockey. Above everything else, above where you were born, how much people like you in the locker room, are you a good guy? Are you a nice guy? Are you this? Are you that? How tall are you? How do you play hockey? Are you good at playing hockey or are you bad at playing hockey? And I wish that more people saw it like that. It's great, getting the hometown guy, getting the hometown whatever. That's all peaches and roses. But can they play hockey well? Is their style of hockey going to benefit this team in the long run? Is this player going to contribute to the Rangers winning games, potentially playoff games, potentially playoff series? Is that going to happen? That's all I want. I want to see more people think about that as opposed to, oh, he's a local kid, he's going to be great. That's not how reality works.
Hey man, we didn't even make fun of the general manager drafting somebody who plays hockey with his son.
Dude, that's
And people
I
are like,
love
it's
it.
great. He knows
Yeah,
him already. Well,
sure.
no, that means he's got the blinders on. It's great that they drafted a guy he knows already, but I don't particularly care that he grew up in Pearl River. That's great. Can he play hockey?
I tweeted this when it happened. It's like, some GMs draft for needs, others draft based on who's the best player still on the board. Christopher Drury drafts based on who's friends with his kid. So
Yeah.
that's how it went. That's how it happened. If this guy wasn't playing with his son, like on the same team, would Chris even know who this person is? No, probably not. So he did the guy. I mean, I guess a favor. Is he still worthy of a draft pick? I guess. I don't really know. That's outside my wheelhouse. But it's kind of slimy to be like, hey, this guy played with my son on the same team, so we can draft him, because it's a good story. Can he play hockey though? That's what I want to know as a fan, as somebody that wants the team to succeed. Can this guy who got drafted based off of nepotism is kind of a strong word to put it, but like, he didn't get drafted because he's like Connor Bedard level skill wise. So how does he play? I don't care about anything else.
It would be nice, man. It would be nice to just worry about the hockey, but the Rangers very clearly care about more than just the hockey, unfortunately. They love
Yep.
themselves a narrative. They love themselves any opportunity to sell something a little bit more than just hockey. I don't care Jonathan Quick is from Connecticut. Jonathan Quick is one of the few hockey players who is on the list. Mortal enemy list, Jonathan Quick. And he hates puppies.
Yeah, that's right. And Dwight King. I will forever
Dwight King and
have
Jonathan
a
Quick are
hatred
two.
for.
When I get to hell, Jonathan Quick is the second person I'm going to fight when I get there. The first is Tom Wilson. Then it'll be Jonathan Quick.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. All right. That'll do it for this week's episode of the Liberty Blue Podcast. Make sure you subscribe. We're available on all the major podcasting platforms. Tap in on YouTube so you can see the pretty visuals. We call it added value in the business. You can get more out of the podcast by watching on YouTube, get a little bit better understanding of some of the stuff we're talking about. We'll see you guys next week, unless the Rangers do anything else, but they have 3 pennies to rub together, so maybe they order a pizza, but that's about it as far as moves for the rest of the week.
Oh, Pizza Boy's getting a pizza, huh? Is that what's going on?
He's going to make him a mean pizza with Vinny Trocheck's Nona's sauce. Vinny Trocheck's Nona's got a mean sauce recipe.
Oh, God.
All right, we'll see you guys next week. Have a safe holiday. Don't do anything too stupid like me that I'm going to do tomorrow.
Oh, boy.
We'll see you guys next week.
All right, later.